Throughout sci-fi and fantasy, great heroes and villains have their signature weapon. Aragorn has Narsil, Flame of the West. Luke Skywalker has his lightsaber, the Youngling Killer 2000. And, of course, Jack Sparrow has his pointy, stabby, pirate swashbuckling. Okay, well, maybe Jack Sparrow's sword isn't as much of a signature sword, but you get the point I'm trying to make. Characters have signature swords, and there's no more iconic signature sword in pop culture than He-Man. Maybe you could find one, but and maybe I'm a little biased, but He-Man's sword is not just known by sort of like the super He-Man fans, but by pop culture in general as not only his iconic weapon, but it's the source of his power. He raises that sword above his head and says the magic words, Shazam! I mean, by the power of Grayskull. And he transforms from scrawny little Prince Adam, and yeah, I know in Filmation he wasn't exactly scrawny because they reused the animation, to He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. And it's all because he's got this great, awesome magic sword that causes lightning and energy and can call upon magic? Magic, sure, why not? Someone get Thor on the phone with this whole lightning thing. I wonder if He-Man stole that from him. And Prince Adam turns into He-Man. He can now save the day. He can transform Cringer into Battle Cat. Wonder what he would do to other pets. No one ever thinks about this kind of stuff. And of course, his sister does the same thing, raises her sword, the Sword of Protection, and again, swirled by awesome 80s dance music, becomes She-Ra. So, if the sword is so important, and the sword is all about the source of He-Man's power, transforming him by the power of Grayskull, I have the power, into He-Man, why in the world is the sword not important to the original toy release? And what I mean is, if you look at the cross-sell on the original toy release, what's called the 8-back, well, he's got his axe, he's got his shield, but where's his sword? The sword that is the source of his power, he's not even holding it in his hand. It's there, just kind of stuck in the ground, next to him, almost like a, hey, He-Man, now also with sword. And why does Skeletor come with the sword? I mean, Skeletor has kind of like the evil half of the sword, and the swords actually combine. They literally clip together to become a full sword. Skeletor has one half, He-Man has the other half, and when you push them together, you got a full sword, and that doesn't make much sense. Why would Skeletor come with half of He-Man's power sword? Is he trying to stop He-Man or Prince Adam from becoming He-Man? And Skeletor's cross-sell, same thing. There's the power sword just kind of sitting there at his feet, like off to the side. He's got his Havoc Staff, which is his signature weapon, but the sword, the other half of the sword, just sitting there. So why did He-Man and Skeletor come with two halves of a sword? Well, that's because back in the day, back in the original storyline, things were different. Now, He-Man and Skeletor getting into sword fights, while it came up in the 2000X series, once Skeletor or Keldor kind of had a different sword, there was more sword-on-sword action, you didn't see that much, especially not in Filmation, which is the most popular version of Masters of the Universe with sort of pop culture at large. You did see it in some of the early mini-comics, some of the DC comics, and even here in the Motu Origins line that Mattel has put out in 2020, you got some sword clashing action going on here. But what's with this? I mean, Skeletor isn't known as a guy who wields a sword, right? I mean, he's got his Havoc Staff. He doesn't use a sword except when he does have a sword. I mean, He-Man doesn't even have a sword in this image. He's just got an axe. Yet Skeletor's got a sword. And okay, I mean, sometimes he picks up a sword, but that's not the sword of power. That's just, like a bone sword. So let's go back to the original mini-comics that came with the 82 figures. Now, these weren't really comics as much as storybooks, because they had words at the bottom and one picture. There were no word balloons, no thought balloons. It was just one single image per page. And these were written by Don Glut, who was forced to write them under duress by Frankenstein's monster. No, just kidding. Mattel paid him to do these. He was a work-for-hire freelancer. And one of the things Mattel asked him to do was to incorporate all of the play features of the figures and the play sets and the vehicles. So like Teela here falling through the trap door inside of Castle Grayskull, controlled by the throne, was a play feature of the playset of Castle Grayskull. And so Don specifically wrote a scene to show that. Same thing here with Beastman blasting He-Man on his jet sled there with the laser gun on top of the castle. Much like a TV commercial, these mini-comics were showing off the features of the toy. So back to the mini-comics in general, beyond the features, you also had this classic panel where He-Man's getting his weapons from the goddess. He's getting a shield, he's getting an axe, he's getting armor that's got a force field, he's getting boots. I don't see a power sword there. So what's up with the power sword? Well, first off, there was no Prince Adam at this point, which is very important because the power sword had a very, very different story and a very different place in the storyline. So in the mini-comics, explained there are two halves of the power sword, just like how He-Man comes with half and Skeletor comes with half in physical toy form. And the goal of both sides, they were constantly fighting over both halves of the power sword, trying to get them together. And why do they want them? Well, combining them together will give you, one, huge amounts of power. Skeletor wanted to use it to open a portal and lead all of his fellow demons from another dimension that looked just like him to Eternia. Kind of reminds me of that Futurama episode with all the mini benders. Here we go, we're all going, all the Skeletors. And then, of course, in some of the comics, like the DC comics, He-Man and Skeletor would combine the swords together, again, in order to overcome a mutual enemy, or, for the greater good. I guess sometimes Skeletor is for the greater good. Why not? But the main reason for wanting to combine the swords is that together, when the swords are one, they literally become a key to unlock the drawbridge of Castle Grayskull by inserting it into the castle like this. And you saw this in a few of the early comics and a few of the early storybooks. Once the sword could be captured, both halves, and combined, whoever had it, in this case Skeletor, because, it's always more dangerous when the villain has it, would insert it, and, lo and behold, open sesame, and the castle drawbridge would open up, letting Skeletor, or whoever has it, inside to get access to all of the secrets and mystic energies of Castle Grayskull that you could then use to, fulfill your evil plots, or your good plots, or your plots. Everyone's got a plot, right? Now, there are two swords in the Filmation Masters of the Universe, the She-Ra sword and He-Man sword. That's a YouTube video for another time. We'll cover that at some other time. But the original swords that came with the 82 action figures were meant to be the key that opens Castle Grayskull. And this was built into the play set's features, the play pattern, the actual play, in the actual door of the drawbridge. Get it? Like jawbridge, drawbridge, that's what they call it, because it's a jaw. So anyway. So you see that little hole in the door there at the bottom? Let's take a closer look. So that hole is meant that if you stick the swords into it, and both of them together, because you need that thickness, you could notch over that little yellow orangish device and it would pull back on the lever you see sticking out on the right, and that would unlock the door magically, and the door would fall open. Now, when we did Motu Classics, the collector line that was on Matty Collector, we actually moved the keyhole from the actual door to where it was in the mini comics, meaning it's a little crack in the rocks there. You see that little hole there. This was something I felt really important to add, and had a big to-do with design over adding this in, but we won in the day because my management really stood behind me on that one. So you would take He-Man's sword, or combine two halves of a sword to get the thickness right, and jam it into the rock, and just like in the mini-comics, the door would magically open. So with the vintage toy, you jammed it into the lock of the door, but now with classics, you actually put it into the rock crevice, which was more accurate to how it was depicted in the early adventures. And you need both halves of the sword, or at least a full sword, to have the thickness right. This was something that was also done in the Mega Bloks playset when Mattel put that out. They also moved the door slot into the rocks. I think Classics kind of reaffirmed that as part of the play and brought it back. That was sort of long forgotten. Now, what's the other half of this? Well, the other half of this play is the flag. You guys remember the flag? The flag that you would have over Castle Grayskull that had two different sides? You would kind of clip it there onto the parapet. Is that the right word? And you would see it hanging over the tower. You could unclip it. You could clip it to either side. But the idea was you could see the flag from afar, and you knew which side you were waving. You were either waving the good side with the sunrise and the yellows and the orange and the happy face and the positive energy and, you know, yay, good guys. And then you can see the little clip. Or, of course, if you just flip it over, it's a two-sided sticker, and you would see the bad guy side with the crackling energy and the purple swords and the evilness, the general evilness that's coming out of it. Sure, why not? And it would be on top of the castle. So this is actually the Classics version, which we also included the flag, although it was a standalone piece, not a clip-on. But it was still there where you could see the flag either showing the good guy side or the bad guy side. So what is with this? What's the whole point of this? Where am I going? Well, the flag was showing who is in control of the castle at any given time. Is Skeletor in control of the castle? Is He-Man in control of the castle? By clipping it on, or placing it in the case of Classics, because we actually did a whole flagpole here, you can see the Classics version, you could easily flip it to either side, and this was showing who sort of, at the moment, controlled the castle. You know, again, here's the Icon Hero statue, but same thing. So the full play pattern is getting both sides of the sword and getting access to the castle and then flipping the flag to your team's side. It's really basically like, you know, Eternia Capture the Flag. Whoever flips the flag is controlling Castle Grayskull, and whoever has the flag is the winner of the game or the play or the adventure, if you will. And, you know, I'm sure Capture the Flag was a lot different with, you know, knights and monsters and swords. It was probably a lot more brutal on Eternia than just kids running around playing Capture the Flag. But that's basically what the original concept was. And if you even look at the box art that Rudy did, and the tagline for the toy was Castle Grayskull, Fortress of Mystery and Power for He-Man and his foes. And you can even see He-Man is attacking the castle here. So it wasn't He-Man's castle, it wasn't the sorceress or the goddess's castle, it was the objective of the play. Whoever had the sword, and the sword was not the source of He-Man's power as it was later done in Filmation, because there was no Prince Adam at this point. Prince Adam was created by DC Comics later on. And that is why He-Man and Skeletor each came with half of essentially He-Man's sword. You would combine the swords together. That would turn them into the key. You would put the key into the slot, or in the case of the vintage toy, into the door lock, and it would be then thick enough to open the door. Then you would turn the flag around to show who was in control of the castle at any given moment. And it could, go back and forth to good guy or bad guy. You never knew what was going to happen. But the flag being your ultimate objective in the play. Now, of course, obviously the sword later got, reimagined as the source of He-Man's power with, again, the whole lightning and the whole, I have the power and Filmation music. And this is really the way it's known in pop culture. But it definitely, because of this, people were confused of why He-Man and Skeletor each came with a half. And there you go. Capture the Flag, Eternia style. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, subscriptions and thumbs up are appreciated because it tells YouTube to share this with other people. And we love sharing things. So, thank you for watching. Comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.